The drill was still whirring in James Mitchell's hand when his boy asked the question that would crack his world in half. "Dad, why does Mom call that man Daddy too?" The garage smelled like cedar and WD-40, the space heater glowing orange in the corner. Tommy stood there holding the flashlight, 8 years old and innocent as Sunday morning, waiting for an answer, the way he'd wait for James to explain why you pre-drill screw holes or how to read a tape measure. James's breath hung visible in the December cold seeping under the door. The drill kept spinning, that high-pitched whine drilling into his skull now, instead of the cabinet hinge they'd been fixing together. "What did you say, buddy?" "Derek, Mom's friend. She calls him Daddy when they think I'm asleep." The boy said it like he was asking about the weather. James stood there, sawdust caught in the winter light coming through the dusty window, and felt 42 years of marriage start to splinter. Tommy ran back towards the house before James could find his voice, calling out, "Mom! When's Derek coming back?" The drill finally died in James's hand. He set it down on the workbench, hands shaking now, and walked through the cold yard to the kitchen door. 42 years. She owed him an explanation. She owed him that much. Linda was at the counter, making coffee when he came in, her back to him. The refrigerator hummed its familiar tune, the same sound that had filled this kitchen since they'd bought the house in '89. Who the hell is Derek? She didn't turn around. Just reached for the cream, poured it slow, watching it swirl into the black coffee like nothing in the world was wrong. "My boyfriend," and she said it the way you'd mention the weather. "Tommy's known for about 3 months now." James felt his knees go soft. He grabbed the edge of the kitchen table, the same table where they'd fed Tommy as a baby, where they'd done taxes every April, where they'd eaten breakfast that very morning. 3 months. Derek and I are moving in together next week." Linda stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic. "We thought it was time to tell you." "Tell me?" His voice cracked. "Linda, we've been married 42 years. She finally turned around, and her face was calm. Too calm. "Which means I wasted enough time, don't you think?" The words hit him like a fist. James opened his mouth, but nothing came. What do you say to that? How do you answer a woman who's just set fire to everything you built together and acts like she's discussing what to make for dinner? He backed toward the door, his coat still hanging on the hook where he'd left it, walked out into the December afternoon without it, without his keys, without anything but the sound of that spoon still clinking in his ears. James ended up in his truck in the driveway, engine off, just sitting there. He could see Linda through the kitchen window, moving around like it was any other Saturday, like she hadn't just blown up their entire life. An hour passed, maybe 2. He'd lost track of time, lost track of everything except the question spinning in his head. How long had this been going on? The fence creaked. Hank Miller, his neighbor, was out with his German Shepherd, pretending to check his mailbox the way neighbors do when they know something's wrong but don't want to pry. "Coffee's on if you want to come in from the cold, Jim." James looked down. His hands were red, fingers numb. He hadn't even noticed. "I'm all right, Hank." The old man, retired sheriff, lived alone since his wife passed, just nodded, didn't push. "Well, offer stands." The dog whined softly, like it could sense something broken in the air. James sat there until the sun started going down, until his breath was clouds in the darkening truck cab. That's when he saw it. A BMW pulling up to his curb. Temporary plates. Some young guy got out, fit, cocky walk, like he owned the whole damn street. The guy saw James sitting there in the truck, smiled, actually smiled, then walked right up to James's front door and let himself in with a key to James's house. James watched Derek's shadow move past the living room window, then upstairs, to the bedroom. He started the truck, didn't know where he was going, just knew he couldn't sit there anymore. Drove to the hardware store, his store, the one he'd built from nothing over 38 years. Let himself in the back door, turned on just enough lights to see, and lay down on the cot he kept in the office for inventory nights. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like Texas. He'd been meaning to fix that for 3 years. His phone buzzed. Linda's text lit up the dark. "Don't be dramatic. Come home, and we'll discuss this like adults." James stared at the message until the screen went black. Outside, Main Street was empty. Saturday evening in December, everyone home with their families. Where he should be. Where he'd thought he was this morning when he was teaching his boy to fix a cabinet hinge. He closed his eyes, but all he could see was that BMW, those temporary plates, Derek walking into his house like he belonged there. How long had this been happening? How many times had that car been in his driveway while he was at work, while he was at the store 6 days a week, trying to build something to pass down to Tommy? The building settled around him, wood creaking in the cold. James pulled the thin blanket over himself and tried not to think about his son sleeping down the hall from a stranger. Tried not to think about Linda in their bed. Tried not to think about how a man gets to be 67 years old and realizes he doesn't even know his own wife. 2 days passed. James opened the store Monday morning like always, moved through the motions of helping customers pick out the right screws, the right sandpaper, the right caulk for their bathroom tiles. Mike, his employee of 20 years, brought him coffee from the diner without being asked. Didn't say anything about the rumpled clothes or the fact that James clearly hadn't been home. Thanks, Mike. We got your back, boss. That was it. That was all that needed saying. Tuesday afternoon, James found an envelope on the store counter. Plain white, his name written in Linda's handwriting. No one had seen who left it. Inside, a note. We should talk. For Tommy's sake, diner, noon tomorrow. James read it 3 times. For Tommy's sake. Maybe she'd realize what she was doing. Maybe she'd come to her senses. Maybe, and he hated himself for the hope that flickered in his chest, maybe there was a way to fix this for the boy. Wednesday at noon, James walked into the diner where he and Linda had their first date 43 years ago. The bell above the door jingled, same sound it had made since 1975. Smell of bacon grease and maple syrup, the old ceiling fan wobbling overhead. He saw Linda in their booth, the one by the window where they used to sit every Sunday after church, back when Sunday dinners meant something. His heart lifted for half a second. Then he got closer and saw Derek sitting beside her. James stopped 3 feet from the table. Linda had already ordered him coffee. Black, the way he took it, like she still knew him, like she still cared about the small things. Derek extended his hand. Good to finally meet you, James. James didn't shake it, just sat down across from them, the vinyl booth squeaking under his weight. Jim, Linda started, using the name she hadn't called him in 10 years. We wanted to talk about an arrangement for Tommy. An arrangement. Derek leaned back, arms stretched along the booth behind Linda, comfortable, possessive. Look, we're all adults here. No reason this has to get ugly. And the kid couldn't have been more than 35. Gym muscles, clean shave, teeth too white. Everything about him screamed temporary. The leased car, the rented confidence, the borrowed swagger. Here's what we're thinking, Linda said, like she was proposing a vacation itinerary. You keep the house, keep paying the mortgage, the utilities, all of that. But Derek and I will raise Tommy. He needs a younger father figure, Jim. Someone who can keep up with him. James's coffee sat untouched, steam rising between them. You're what, 65? 67? Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. Can't blame you for getting tired. Boy, that age needs energy. Needs someone who can throw a football, take him skateboarding, modern stuff. I know my son. Sure you do. Derek's voice dripped with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so clearly condescension. No hard feelings, Pops. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone. Pops. James looked at Linda. Really looked at her. She was wearing makeup she hadn't bothered with in years, new clothes, hair freshly colored to hide the gray she'd been complaining about for the last decade. This is what you want? He asked her. She wouldn't meet his eyes. It's what's best for Tommy. James stood up, pulled a 20 from his wallet, and set it on the table. More than enough for the coffee he hadn't touched. His hands were steady. That surprised him. Jim, Linda started. But he was already walking toward the door. Behind him, he heard Derek laugh. Actually laugh. Betty, who'd owned the diner since before James and Linda got married, watched him leave. In the corner booth, Mrs. Patterson from church suddenly became very interested in her pie. Small towns. Everyone would know by sunset. James sat in his truck in the parking lot, key in the ignition but not turning it. Through the window he could see Linda and Derek, relaxed now, talking. Derek said something that made Linda smile. The same smile she used to give James when they were young. His phone buzzed. Linda's text. Think about Tommy. This is best for everyone. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. He looked down at his left hand on the steering wheel. Wedding ring still there after 42 years. Tan line underneath it from all those summers working outside. Building the business, building a life. When had he become irrelevant in his own life? The mail was waiting when he got back to the store. Mike had sorted it. Bills in one stack, invoices in another. But there was an envelope that didn't fit either category. Mortgage statement. James opened it. Mine still half on the diner, on Derek's laugh, on Linda's new smile. Balance due. $85,000. He blinked, read it again. They didn't have an $85,000 mortgage. They'd paid off the house 6 years ago. He'd thrown a little party, just him and Linda and Tommy, celebrating being debt-free. He called the bank, got transferred twice, finally reached someone who pulled up his account. Yes, Mr. Mitchell. The loan was approved October 12th. You came in and signed the papers yourself. October 12th? James pulled out his desk calendar, flipped back. I was in Milwaukee, trade show. I've got the hotel receipt. Silence on the line. Sir, I'm looking at your signature right here on the document. His signature. But he'd been in Milwaukee. James hung up, opened his filing cabinet with shaking hands, pulled out the credit card statements he'd been too busy to look at closely. There, in the stack, 3 cards he didn't remember opening. $42,000 in charges, hotels, jewelry, cash advances, all starting in August. The store's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Outside, the December afternoon was getting dark. James spread the papers across his desk, proof that he was being robbed. Proof that this wasn't just about Linda wanting a younger man. This was something bigger, something planned. His phone rang, local number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Thompson and Associates. We're calling about your outstanding debt of—" James hung up. The bell above the store's front door jingled. He looked up. Hank Miller stood there, holding a manila folder. The retired sheriff's face was grim. "Jim, you got a minute? There's something you need to see." Hank set the folder on James's desk, right next to the mortgage statements and credit card bills. The old sheriff's hands were steady, hands that had cuffed drunk drivers and written up accident reports for 30 years. "Been watching your place," Hank said. "Wasn't trying to spy, just something didn't sit right." He opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, timestamps in the corners, security camera footage. "My camera's aimed at my driveway, but it catches your house too. Started noticing things back in August." Image after image. Derek's BMW pulling into James's driveway. 9:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. 9:03 a.m. on a Thursday. Over and over, always when James would have been at the store. "That's 32 times I got on camera," Hank said quietly. "And I only installed the thing in August." And James's throat went tight. 32 times. While he was selling paint and lumber and helping old Mrs. Henderson pick out the right hinges for her kitchen cabinet. "There's more." Hank pulled out another set of photos. Tommy visible in one, getting into Derek's car. Date stamp, October 24th, 10:15 a.m. "That's a school day," James said. "I know." The truancy report, the mortgage, the credit cards. It was all connected, all planned, all happening while James was 6 blocks away, thinking everything was fine. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Hank's face went hard. "I lost my boy to something like this. Divorced back in '87. His mother poisoned him against me, said things that weren't true, and by the time I realized what was happening, he stopped. Danny died in a car accident when he was 22. We never reconciled." The fluorescent lights hummed above them. Outside on Main Street, someone's car horn honked. "I won't watch another good man lose his son without a fight, Jim. That's why I'm here." Friday morning, James had an appointment with Frank Morrison, the only lawyer in town. Frank's office was above the pharmacy, same place it had been for 30 years. Coffee pot in the corner, law books on shelves that hadn't been dusted since Clinton was president. Frank spread the divorce papers on his desk. Read them slowly, lips moving slightly. "Jim, I've known you 30 years. I believe every word you say, but this—" He tapped the papers. "This looks bad. Linda was asking for full custody. Claimed James was emotionally unstable and potentially dangerous. Had documented incidents, dates, times, descriptions of him, allegedly slamming doors, yelling, showing controlling behavior. I never did any of that." "I know, but she's got dates, details. Her lawyer's from Milwaukee, expensive firm. Someone's funding this." Frank pulled out another document. "She wants the house, the business, and alimony. Says she sacrificed her career to support you building the store. She worked at the bank for 2 years. Quit when Tommy was born. That was her choice." "I know, Jim, I know." Frank poured coffee that smelled like it had been sitting since yesterday. "But the court will see a woman who stayed home raising your child while you built a business. And now she's got this Derek fellow saying he'll provide a stable home environment. He's a con artist. Look at these." James showed him the mortgage fraud, the credit cards. Frank studied them. "This proves financial fraud. We can pursue that separately. But custody's a different battle. Even if we prove he's a criminal, doesn't automatically mean you get Tommy." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need a specialist. Someone who handles parental alienation cases. I'm a generalist, Jim. DUIs, property disputes, simple divorces. This—" Frank looked uncomfortable. "This is warfare, and they've got bigger guns." Sunday morning, James made himself go to church. Couldn't hide forever. The bells from St. Mary's rang across town, same as they had every Sunday for 100 years. He walked into the sanctuary and felt eyes turn. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Mrs. Henderson came right up and hugged him. Didn't say a word, just held on for a moment, then went to her pew. The Kramers saw him and suddenly remembered they needed to talk to someone on the other side of the room. James sat in his usual spot, 5th row, right side, aisle seat. The pew felt bigger, without Linda beside him, without Tommy squirming and asking when they could leave. Reverend Patterson's sermon was about Job, about trials and faith and enduring when you don't understand why. James barely heard it. He was counting faces. Mike from the store, sitting with his family, gave him a small nod. Betty from the diner was there, caught his eye and smiled sad. The young mother 3 rows up whispered something to her friend, both of them glancing back at him. After the service, most people drifted past with awkward smiles or averted eyes. Reverend Patterson caught him at the door. My office, 5 minutes. The office smelled like old books and coffee. Patterson poured 2 cups without asking. I heard about the divorce. Whole town's heard. That's how it works. The Reverend sat down, gestured for James to do the same. I also heard about the custody suit, the fraud allegations, the young man. James wrapped his hands around the coffee mug, warm against his cold fingers. Sometimes doing the right thing costs us friends, Jim. Costs us comfort. Costs us the life we thought we'd have. Patterson leaned forward. But you're doing right by that boy. I see you with Tommy. I've seen you for 8 years. You're a good father. Linda's lawyer says, I don't care what her lawyer says. I care what's true. Patterson pulled a business card from his desk. My cell number's on the back, day or night. You call if you need anything. It was such a small thing, a phone number, but James felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you. Walking to his truck, James saw Linda's car drive past slowly, Tommy in the back seat. The boy's face lit up when he saw his dad, started waving frantically. Linda didn't stop. Just kept driving, Tommy's face pressed against the window, hand up in a wave. That went unreturned because the car was already turning the corner. James stood there in the church parking lot, hand half raised, waving at empty air. He hadn't seen his son in 9 days. His phone rang. Hank. Jim, need you to come by tonight. Found something else about Derek. You're not going to like it, but you need to see it. James looked at his truck, at the church behind him, at the empty street where Tommy's face had been. I'll be there. December crawled by like something wounded. James went through the motions, opened the store at 7, closed at 6, ate when he remembered to, slept on the cot in the back office more nights than not. Mike started leaving casseroles from his wife on the desk. James would find them in the morning, still warm in their foil. The store's Christmas decorations hung half-strung. Mike had finished them without asking, but James barely noticed. Customers came and went. Some asked about his holiday plans with forced cheer in their voices. He'd change the subject, ring up their purchases, send them on their way. Frank called weekly with updates that weren't really updates. Motion filed for emergency visitation. Hearing scheduled for January 3rd. January 3rd. After New Year's. After the court holiday closure. After Christmas. Christmas. James drove past his old house one evening. Couldn't help himself. The lights were up. Derek must have done it. James had always put them up the day after Thanksgiving. Him and Tommy working together, untangling strands and testing bulbs. Linda's car was in the driveway. Tommy's bike on the porch, gathering snow. James wanted to knock, wanted to see his boy. But the restraining order Linda had filed said he couldn't. 200 feet minimum distance. His own house was off limits. He sat in his truck across the street until his breath fogged the windows, then drove back to the store. December 23rd. The school's winter break started. 2 weeks Tommy would be out of school. 2 weeks James wouldn't even have the possibility of seeing him in a parking lot, a playground, anywhere. Boss. Mike stood in the office doorway. Store's closing tomorrow through the 26th anyway. Go home. This is home. Mike's face did something complicated. No, sir, it's not. But maybe it's time to find one that is, after Mike left. James locked up and drove to the apartment he'd rented. Efficiency above the hardware store on 2nd Street. 1 room, kitchenette, bathroom, with a shower that dripped. He'd moved his clothes there last week. Not much else. Most of his life was still in that house, with the Christmas lights Derek had hung. Christmas Eve morning, he opened the store for a few hours. Couple of last-minute customers needed batteries, wrapping paper, things they'd forgotten. Mrs. Henderson brought him cookies shaped like bells and stars. No one should be alone on Christmas, James. But after she left, after he locked the door, at noon, alone was exactly what he was. The apartment waited. He'd bought a small tree, 4 feet tall, pre-lit from the drugstore. Him and Tommy had set it up 3 weeks ago, before Linda's lawyer filed the restraining order. Tommy had hung a dozen ornaments before Linda called, said she was picking him up early. The tree still stood in the corner, half decorated. The ornaments Tommy had hung clustered on one side, the rest of the branches bare, presents underneath. Wrapped in paper James had done himself, tape crooked, corners not quite right. Tool set for Tommy, science kit, 3 books about building things, all of it just sitting there. 7 p.m. on Christmas Eve. James sat in his recliner, the one thing he'd taken from the house. Lights off except for the tree, blinking its pattern. Red, green, red, green. Through the wall, he could hear the neighbors. Young couple, 2 kids, laughter, Christmas music, the sound of family. His phone sat dark on the side table. No calls, no texts. Tommy was with Linda and Derek at some cabin upstate, making new memories. Linda's lawyer had written in an email. James looked at the half-decorated tree, at the presents that wouldn't be opened, at the apartment that smelled like nothing because he'd only been sleeping here, not living here. 42 years of marriage, 67 years of life. And this is where it led. Alone, on Christmas Eve in a rented room, listening to someone else's children laugh. The colored lights blurred. He blinked hard. What was the point? Linda was younger, had Derek's energy and money behind her. Her lawyer was expensive and good. Frank had basically admitted he was outmatched. The system moved slow, and Tommy was 8 years old. Every day that passed was a day Derek had to turn the boy against him. Maybe Linda was right. Maybe Tommy did need someone younger, someone who could keep up, someone who wasn't an old man getting older, getting tired, getting left behind by the world. The church bells from St. Mary's rang 8 times, Christmas Eve service starting. James had gone every year since he was a boy. Not tonight. The furnace clicked off. The apartment got colder. James sat in the dark, in the cold, in the silence. And for the first time in his life, he understood why men just stopped trying. His phone lit up. Hank's name. James stared at it. 4 rings, 5. On the 6th ring, something in him, some small part that wasn't ready to quit, made his hand move. He answered. "Get over here." Hank's voice was urgent. "I got something to show you. Now, Jim." Hank's kitchen was warm, coffee percolating on the stove, that old-school smell filling the room. Max, the German shepherd, greeted James at the door, tail wagging like James was someone worth being happy to see. Hank had his laptop open on the kitchen table, files stacked beside it, a thumb drive labeled Evidence. "Been working all week on this." Hank gestured to the chair. "Sit down. You need to see what I found." The footage James had already seen was there. Derek's car, the timestamps, the pattern of visits. But Hank had more now. Called in favors from some old buddies still on the force. Ran Derek's name through the system. Hank pulled up a document. Derek Vance. Restraining order filed against him in 2019, 2 counties over. James leaned forward. Guy named Robert Callahan. Age 72. Same story. Derek came into his life through the wife, moved in quick, forged signatures on loans and credit cards. Total damage, $150,000. What happened to him? Derek disappeared before the trial. Wife divorced Robert, moved to Florida with Derek, eventually came back broke and alone. Robert never recovered the money. Hank pulled up more files. There's 2 more, same pattern, 2017, 2018. Different states, different names, same con. Linda's the 4th. Yeah. Hank's face was grim. She's not special to him, Jim. She's a mark. And Tommy's just collateral damage. The kitchen clock ticked. Max laid his head on James's knee. "I contacted Robert Callahan," Hank said. "He's willing to testify. Says if it helps stop Derek from doing this again, he'll get on a plane." James felt something shift in his chest. Not hope exactly, but maybe the absence of complete despair. The doorbell rang. 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Hank and James looked at each other. Max barked once. Hank went to the door, opened it. A woman stood on the porch. 60-something, thin, 1 suitcase beside her. She had James's eyes, James's nose. "Little brother," she said. "I heard. I'm here." Margaret, his sister, who he hadn't seen in 20 years. Margaret walked into Hank's kitchen without waiting for an invitation. Set her suitcase down. Looked at James with eyes that were the same gray-blue as his own, the same eyes their mother had. "Maggie." "Yeah." She pulled out a chair, sat down at the table like she'd been there 100 times. "You look like hell, Jim. 20 years. 20 years since their mother's funeral, since the fight about Linda, since Margaret had driven back to Phoenix and never called again." Hank poured a 3rd cup of coffee, set it in front of Margaret without a word. "How did you know?" James asked. "Small towns talk?" Someone called. Someone who called someone else. "I got the message 3 weeks ago." She pulled off her coat. "Took me a while to arrange things. Get here. I don't need your pity." "Good. I'm not offering pity." Margaret wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. "I'm offering help, and I've got plenty of money and time." That word, time, hung in the air strange, but James was too tired to parse it. "Maggie, I can't afford." "I didn't ask what you could afford." She pulled out her phone. "What's the name of your lawyer?" "Frank Morrison, but he's already said—" Margaret was dialing. "Put the phone on speaker." It rang 4 times before a man's voice answered, groggy and annoyed. "Steve, it's Margaret Parsons. Sorry about the hour. I need the best custody lawyer in Wisconsin. Money's no object." "Jesus, Margaret, it's Christmas Eve. I know what day it is. I need a name by tomorrow afternoon." Silence on the line. Then, "There's a woman in Madison, Samantha Chen. Specializes in parental alienation cases. She's expensive. I don't care what she costs. Get her. Margaret hung up, looked at James. She'll call tomorrow. Maggie, don't. She held up a hand. Just don't. You're my brother. Tommy's my nephew. This ends now. Hank set a plate of cookies on the table, the ones Mrs. Henderson had brought. Margaret took one, bit into it. Nobody spoke for a moment. Why'd you really come back? James asked quietly. Margaret's jaw tightened. Because I was right about Linda 20 years ago, and being right doesn't mean shit if I'm not here when it matters. The story came out slowly, over the next hour, how Margaret had warned James before the wedding in 1982, told him Linda was marrying him for security, not love. How James had defended Linda, said Margaret was jealous of his happiness. How they'd fought at the rehearsal dinner, and Margaret had driven back to Phoenix the next morning, missed the wedding entirely. I told myself I was done, Margaret said. You made your choice, but I was really just proud. Stubborn. Mom died in 2002, and I came back for 3 days. You and Linda barely spoke to me. I left again. You could have called. So could you. She looked at him. We're both stubborn idiots. Difference is I'm here now. Hank cleared his throat. Show her the rest. James pushed the files across the table. The mortgage fraud, the credit cards, Derek's pattern with previous victims. Margaret read through everything with the focused efficiency of someone who'd spent 30 years in pharmaceutical sales, reading contracts and spotting problems. When she finished, she sat back. He's done this before. 3 times we know of, Hank said. Linda knows? James pulled out the bank statements. She was there, on camera, 2 of the signings. Margaret's face went hard. So she's not just unfaithful. She's a co-conspirator. The word landed heavy. Co-conspirator, his wife of 42 years. The woman who'd held his hand in the delivery room when Tommy was born. Who'd cried at their parents' funerals. Who'd made coffee every morning for 4 decades. We need to prove parental alienation, Hank said. Prove Derek's pattern. And prove Linda's being intentionally turning Tommy against Jim. Margaret pulled out a legal pad from her purse. Started making lists. Organized. Methodical. The way she'd always been. James watched his sister work and felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. The possibility that maybe he wasn't fighting this alone. Margaret's phone buzzed around 2 in the morning. She glanced at it, typed something back. Samantha Chen. She'll be here day after tomorrow. Says based on what I told her, this is winnable. James felt his throat tighten. I can't pay. Jim. Margaret set down her pen. I'm paying. Don't argue with me about this. Why? Why after 20 years? She was quiet for a long moment. Hank stood up, made fresh coffee, gave them space. I've got stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Margaret said finally. 6 months, maybe. The kitchen clock ticked. Max whined softly from his bed in the corner. Maggie, I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because I'm dying, and I need to do one good thing before I go. Her voice was steady. I wasted 20 years being right, being proud. I don't have time for that anymore. James reached across the table, took his sister's hand. Her fingers were thin, too thin. How had he not noticed when she walked in? You should be resting. Getting treatment. I'm getting treatment in Phoenix, but I'm here now, and I'm seeing this through. She squeezed his hand. You're my little brother. I should have been here all along. I'm here now. Over the next hour, they built a plan. Hank would formally contact Robert Callahan, get his statement documented. Margaret would coordinate with the new lawyer, organize all the evidence into a proper case file. James would compile every photo, every school event, every moment that proved he'd been a present father. We need character witnesses, Margaret said. People who've seen you with Tommy, who can testify to Linda's behavior. Mike from the store, Betty at the diner, Tommy's teacher, Mrs. Kowalski. Good. Make a list. Hank's laptop pinged. Email from his old deputy buddy. Got something on Derek's financials. Multiple credit cards under different names. Attempting to set up offshore accounts. Badly. Guy's not as smart as he thinks he is. Margaret noted it down. Financial sophistication. Shows this is a career pattern, not a one-time mistake. James's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. James? An old woman's voice. It's Eleanor, Linda's mother. James straightened. Linda's mother was 89, lived in an assisted living facility in Green Bay. He hadn't spoken to her since Thanksgiving. Eleanor. I heard about the divorce, about Derek. She was crying. I told Linda she was making a mistake. She said you were boring. I said she was a fool. Eleanor, you don't have to. Yes, I do. That boy needs his father. You're a good man, James. You always were. Her voice shook. My health won't let me travel for a trial, but I'll write down everything I know. I'll tell the truth about how Linda's always been, how she's treated you. She's your daughter. And Tommy's my grandson. Sometimes you have to choose. Eleanor coughed. I'll mail it to you. An affidavit, whatever they call it. You use it. You get that boy back. She hung up. James set the phone down, looked at Margaret and Hank. Linda's own mother. Margaret said quietly, that'll carry weight. They worked until 4 in the morning, building the case, making lists, strategy and evidence and witnesses. Margaret organized it all with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades managing complex sales, territories, and pharmaceutical reps. She coughed occasionally, harsh, wet, pulled a pill bottle from her purse, took 2 white tablets with her coffee. James watched her, really looked at her. The thinness wasn't just age. The urgency wasn't just guilt. She was dying, and she was spending her last months fighting for him. Maggie, don't. She knew what he was going to say. This is what I want to do. This is what I need to do. Dawn was starting to break when they finally stopped. Gray winter light through Hank's kitchen window. Max stretched and yawned. Court reopens January 2nd, Hank said. Emergency hearing for visitation on the 3rd. Full custody trial probably late January. 6 weeks, Margaret said. She didn't say what they all knew. She might not have 6 weeks. James's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Drop this and I'll disappear. Keep going and I'll make Tommy hate you forever. Below it, a photo. Tommy sitting on a couch, playing video games with Derek. Both of them laughing. James showed it to the others. He's scared, Hank said. Scared people make mistakes. Forward it to me, Margaret said. Evidence of witness intimidation. But James kept staring at the photo. Tommy looked happy, really happy. Playing games with Derek, laughing, relaxed. What if it was already too late? What if Tommy was already lost? Jim. Margaret's voice was sharp. Look at me. He did. We're going to win this. You hear me? We're going to win. Outside, Christmas morning broke cold and clear over the small town. Somewhere across town, Tommy was waking up in a cabin with Linda and Derek. Opening presents James hadn't wrapped. Making memories James wasn't part of. But here in Hank's kitchen, with his sister and his neighbor, James felt something he hadn't felt since that Saturday in the garage. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. December 26th, Samantha Chin arrived from Madison in a charcoal suit that cost more than James made in a week. Sharp eyes, efficient movements, no wasted words. Margaret had set up the meeting at Hank's house. Neutral ground, more space than James's apartment. Samantha spread their evidence across Hank's dining table like a general planning a battle. Security footage, financial records, Derek's pattern with previous victims. Eleanor's affidavit arrived via FedEx that morning in shaky handwriting that still cut clear and true. This is solid, Samantha said. Better than most cases I see. But we need to prove intentional parental alienation. Document every time she's blocked visitation. Every manipulative statement Tommy's repeated. Every sign she's systematically turning him against you. How do I prove that? Tommy's therapy notes from court-ordered counseling, his teacher's observations, the truancy record, and your own testimony. You'll need to tell your story simply, honestly, without bitterness. James nodded. Simple, honest. He could do that. Emergency hearing is January 3rd, Samantha continued. We'll ask for immediate restoration of visitation rights. Full custody trial will be early February. That gives us 5 weeks to build the case. Margaret made notes, coughed into her hand. When she pulled it away, James saw spots of red on the tissue she used. First priority, Samantha said, is getting you time with Tommy. The longer you're kept apart, the more damage Linda does. January 3rd came cold and bright. The county courthouse sat on Main Street, red brick and white columns, same building that had been there since 1904. James wore the suit Hank had loaned him. Fit poorly in the shoulders, but it was clean and pressed. Margaret sat in the gallery in her wheelchair. She'd collapsed 2 days earlier. Hospital wanted to keep her, but she'd signed herself out against medical advice. I'm not missing this, she'd said. Judge Patricia Morrison presided. 63, been on the bench 19 years, had a reputation for cutting through nonsense. She read the motion for emergency visitation with no expression. Linda's lawyer, Kenneth Walsh, expensive Milwaukee firm, argued that James was unstable. Presented the fake text messages, the manufactured incidents. Samantha countered with Hank's security footage, Eleanor's affidavit. The truancy records showing Linda, not James, had enabled Tommy's absences. Judge Morrison studied the evidence, looked at Linda over her reading glasses. Mrs. Mitchell, you claim your husband is dangerous, yet I see no police reports, no medical records, no credible documentation. Linda started to answer, but Derek, sitting beside her, stood up. Your Honor, she was afraid. Sit down, Mr. Vance. Judge Morrison's voice could freeze water. You'll get your turn if you're called. Derek sat, but the outburst was noted. Inappropriate, possessive. The judge ruled, visitation restored, 4 hours weekly, unsupervised. Linda would facilitate or face contempt charges. Small victory, but a victory. January 6th, first visitation at the Family Services Building. Sterile room, table and chairs. Observation window where a social worker watched. James brought a model car kit, same kind he and Tommy used to build together. Tommy came in with Linda, reluctant, wouldn't look at his dad. Linda kissed the top of his head. "I'll be right outside if you need me, sweetie." The door closed. "Hey, buddy." Tommy stared at the floor. "Derek says building stuff is boring. He takes me to the gym. First punch." Derek's words coming from his boy's mouth. "Well, I like building stuff, and I miss building with you." James opened the kit. "What do you say?" Tommy glanced at it. Interest flickered despite himself. They worked in silence at first, James's hands guiding Tommy's, explaining how the pieces fit. Slowly, the old rhythm returned. Tommy's tongue sticking out a little when he concentrated, the way he'd hum without realizing it. "Derek's teaching me skateboarding and video games. Cool stuff." "Oh, that does sound fun." "Mom says you're too old to keep up with me." James's hands stopped, just for a second. Then he kept working, kept his voice steady. "Maybe I am getting older, but I'll never be too old to love you, Tommy." Tommy looked up, really looked at him for the first time. "I miss you, Dad." "I miss you too, buddy. But Mom says you're trying to take me away from her." "I'm trying to keep you with me, that's different." James set down the piece he was holding. "I want you to have both of us, your mom and me. Just maybe not together anymore." "Because of Derek?" "Careful now. Don't badmouth Linda." The lawyer had been clear. "Because your mom and I couldn't figure things out. But that's not your fault. None of this is your fault." They built. The hour passed. Tommy laughed at one of James's old jokes. By the time Linda knocked on the door, early, before the scheduled end, they'd almost finished the car. "Can we finish next time?" Tommy asked. "We can finish next time." Tommy hugged him, quick, like he was afraid someone would see, then pulled away and went to his mother. The social worker approached James after they left. "Mr. Mitchell, my observations will be in my report. I saw a child who loves his father and a father who's patient and kind." She handed him her card. "He's going to be okay. Keep fighting." The weeks blurred together. Margaret organized everything from Hank's house. Too weak now to do much else. Witnesses prepared statements. Mike from the store, Betty from the diner, Mrs. Kowalski agreed to testify about Tommy's confusion and Linda's neglect. Robert Callahan, Derek's previous victim, flew in from 2 counties over. 74 years old, walked with a cane, but determined. "If I can stop him from doing this to someone else," Robert said, "it'll be worth it." Margaret's health deteriorated. Hospice nurses came to Hank's house. She refused to go to a hospital. "I'm testifying," she told James. "I came back for this. I'm finishing it." February 1st, the night before trial, Margaret collapsed. Ambulance took her to the hospital. Doctor said she had days, maybe weeks. "I'm testifying tomorrow," Margaret told the doctor from her hospital bed. "You can wheel me in or I'll crawl. Your choice." The doctor looked at James. "She means it," James said. Margaret gripped his hand. "Promise me. If I can't finish. Promise me you'll still fight." I promise, Maggie." Outside the hospital, James's phone buzzed. Derek again. Last chance. Drop it or lose everything. But attached to the threat was Derek's mistake. Metadata from the photo, showing it had been taken at James's old house. Proof Derek was still there, still in control, still manipulating Tommy. James forwarded it to Samantha, then to the police. Witness intimidation, harassment. Morning came too fast. February 2nd. The courtroom smelled like old wood and floor polish. Radiator hissing steam despite the cold outside. Gallery filling with people. Hank, Mike, Betty, half the town taking sides. Margaret, in her wheelchair. Oxygen tank beside her. Gaunt but fierce. Hank had signed her out of the hospital against every doctor's recommendation. James, in Hank's borrowed suit. Linda in new clothes, looking younger than her 62 years. Derek beside her, clean-cut and confident. Judge Morrison entered. Everyone stood. "This is a custody hearing concerning minor child Thomas Mitchell. I've reviewed the preliminary materials. Proceed with opening statements." Kenneth Walsh stood first. Expensive suit, practiced gestures. Painted a picture of devoted mother and workaholic father. James at the store, 60 hours a week. Tommy reporting his father was always tired, always busy. Linda filling the gap, attending school events, providing daily care. Recent months, Mr. Mitchell became unstable. Door slamming, yelling, controlling behavior. Mrs. Mitchell feared for her safety and her son's well-being. Derek Vance has been a stabilizing presence, young, energetic, able to connect with the child in ways the father cannot. Walsh sat down, confident. Samantha stood. No wasted movement. James Mitchell has been a present father for 8 years. Every parent-teacher conference, every school event, every hospital visit, and she pulled up a calendar on the screen. Here's the documentation. Here's the attendance record. Compare that to Mrs. Mitchell's spotty presence. She showed the security footage, Derek's car, timestamps, pattern of visits during work hours. Mrs. Mitchell claims her husband is unstable, yet there are no police reports, no medical records, no credible witnesses. What we have is a woman caught in an affair, trying to justify her choices. She introduced Derek's pattern. The restraining orders, the previous victims, Robert Callahan's case, this isn't romance, it's a con. And Tommy is collateral damage. She showed the truancy records. 23 absences, all approved by Linda, without James's knowledge. Parental alienation is child abuse. Linda Mitchell has systematically turned this boy against his father. James Mitchell isn't perfect, but he's present, he's honest, and he's Tommy's father. Judge Morrison made notes. No expression. Mrs. Mitchell, you're first. Linda took the stand. Sworn in. She looked calm, practiced. Walsh led her through the story. 42 years of trying. James becoming distant, cold, working all the time. She'd felt lonely. Derek had been kind. She hadn't planned to fall in love, but it happened. Tommy bonded with Derek naturally. He needed a father figure who was present, who had energy, who could keep up with an 8-year-old's needs. She cried on cue. Perfect tears. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to be happy. Is that so wrong? Walsh finished. Looked satisfied. Samantha stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Mitchell, when did you meet Derek Vance? Last July, at the gym. Samantha showed a hotel receipt. This receipt shows Derek's credit card at a hotel in town June 15th. You met before July, didn't you? Linda's face flickered. I don't remember exactly. You don't remember a hotel room. We were just friends then. Let's talk about Tommy. You said he bonded with Derek naturally. When did you introduce them? After a few months. So August? But you told the court Tommy only knew for 3 months, which is true. Linda stumbled. I meant seriously knowing you lied about the timeline. Samantha's voice was surgical. Let's talk about the truancy. 23 absences. You approved all of them? Tommy needed... What was he learning on these project days? Life skills, projects at home. His teacher says he couldn't describe what he learned. What projects? Linda went silent. Mrs. Kowalski will testify Tommy told her they went to the gym and watched movies. That's not education. That's neglect. Samantha paused. Let's talk about the mortgage. Did you sign your husband's name? Derek handled the finances. Did you know he was forging signatures? I trusted him. Samantha showed bank security footage. Linda visible in 2 frames, standing beside Derek during signings. You were there, Mrs. Mitchell. You knew. Derek said it was fine. So you admit you participated in fraud? No. I mean, it wasn't... No further questions. Linda left the stand shaken, her story full of holes. Derek took the stand next, all confidence, smiled at the judge. Walsh walked him through his version. Caring about Tommy, wanting to help, being a mentor. The boy needs energy. His father's getting older. Can't keep up. I'm just trying to help raise him right. No further questions. Samantha approached like a shark scenting blood. Vance, you've mentioned James Mitchell's age several times. Why? Just facts. Or emphasizing to make yourself look better? She didn't wait for an answer. Let's talk about Robert Callahan. Derek's face changed. Who? Samantha held up the restraining order. Robert Callahan, age 72. You met him through his wife in 2019. I don't know. This restraining order has your name, your signature, says you defrauded him of $150,000. That was a misunderstanding. What about James Patterson, 2018, Karen Delgado, 2017? She laid out 3 more case files. Same pattern, older man, younger wife, forged signatures. You disappear. Derek's lawyer objected. Judge overruled. This is your 4th time, isn't it? That's not... Explain the pattern. Derek went silent. His lawyer stood. Your Honor, answer the question, Mr. Vance. I can't explain someone else's allegations. These aren't allegations. These are police reports. Court documents. You're a predator. No further questions. Derek left the stand pale and angry. Recess, 15 minutes. In the hallway, Linda and Derek argued. Voices raised, hands gesturing, their unity cracking. James watched from across the hall with Samantha and Hank, Margaret too weak to leave her wheelchair. We're winning, Samantha said quietly. But James watched Derek's face, watched the calculation, the panic. Men like that didn't go down easy. Court resumed at 1. Mr. Mitchell, please take the stand. And then James walked up, hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat in the wooden chair that creaked under his weight. Samantha led him through it gently. The marriage. The years building the business while trying to be present for Tommy. Saturday breakfasts at the diner. Garage projects. School events. Every moment he could steal from the store to be with his boy. I worked hard, James said. Thought that's what fathers did. Build something to pass down. But I was there for breakfast. Home for dinner most nights. Weekends were Tommy's. His voice was steady. Plain. Honest. When did you learn about the affair? December 2nd. Tommy asked me why his mother called Derek Daddy, too. That's how I found out. My 8-year-old told me. The courtroom went quiet. What did you do? I left. Didn't know what else to do. Slept at my store. Couldn't think straight. Did you ever hurt your wife or son? Never. Not once. Not even when it would have been easier than feeling what I felt. Walsh cross-examined. Tried to shake him. Asked about work hours. About missing things. About being tired. I worked to provide. But I was there when it mattered. I was there. You drove by the house repeatedly. It's a public street. My house. I never stopped. Never violated the restraining order. Walsh showed the fake texts. James studied them. That's not my number, not my words. Someone made those up. Walsh had nothing. James's honesty was unshakable. Then James looked at Linda, really looked at her. In 42 years, did I ever once raise my hand to you or Tommy? The question hung in the air. Linda wouldn't meet his eyes. Her silence was louder than any answer. No further questions, Walsh said quietly. Hank took the stand next. Retired sheriff, 30 years on the force. Presented the security footage methodically. Explained the timestamps, the pattern, the evidence of parental alienation in action. I lost my son to something like this, Hank said. Divorce in 87. His mother turned him against me. He died before we reconciled. I won't watch another good man lose his boy. His voice cracked on the last word. The judge thanked him personally. Rare for a judge to speak during testimony. Then Margaret. Hank wheeled her to the witness box. The bailiff had to help her transfer to the chair. Oxygen tank beside her. Face gaunt, hands shaking as she placed them on the Bible. The courtroom went silent. Everyone could see she was dying. Please state your relationship to James Mitchell. Margaret's voice was weak but clear. He's my little brother. I haven't seen him in 20 years. That's my fault. She explained. The warning before the wedding, the fight, 20 years of absence. I was right about Linda. But being right doesn't matter if you're not there for family. Samantha asked why she came back. I'm dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 4 months, maybe less. Margaret coughed, blood on the tissue she pressed to her mouth. I came back to do one good thing before I go, to help my brother, to save my nephew. People in the gallery were crying now. Linda's always been about herself. Even at 23, she wanted the easy life. James wanted family. She chose wrong. Margaret looked at the judge. Tommy deserves a father who shows up. James shows up. He always has. Walsh tried to discredit her in cross-examination. You abandoned your brother for 20 years. Because I was proud, stubborn, wrong. But Margaret's eyes were fierce. I'm dying. I have nothing to gain by lying. I'm here for Tommy, not for me. Judge Morrison stopped Walsh. That's enough. Continue, counselor, but with respect. Margaret turned to James. I'm sorry it took dying to come back, but I'm here now, and that boy needs you. Hank wheeled her out. She'd spent everything she had left on those few minutes. Mrs. Kowalski, Tommy's teacher, testified next. Professional, factual, devastating. Tommy asked me in November if it was normal to have two daddies who don't like each other. He seemed genuinely confused. She described the truancy, Linda's project days, Tommy's inability to explain what he'd learned. He said they went to the gym and watched movies. No educational value. She testified about James, every parent-teacher conference. Knew Tommy's friends, his struggles, his interest. Mr. Mitchell was present. Mrs. Mitchell came to maybe half the conferences, usually late. Post-separation, Tommy showed signs of parental alienation. He expressed fear of making mom mad if he said he missed his dad. Classic manipulation. Walsh had no effective cross-examination. The facts were the facts. Robert Callahan took the stand. 74, walking with his cane, Derek's previous victim. He told his story. Meeting Derek through his ex-wife. The pattern. The fraud. $150,000 in debt. Derek disappearing before trial. He said to me, "No hard feelings, Pops." Same words. He's got a script. He follows it. He destroys families for money. Robert looked at Derek. I don't want another man to go through what I did. I don't want another child hurt by this predator. Walsh tried to discredit him. Failed. The old man's honesty was granite. Judge Morrison called a recess to review. 45 minutes that felt like years. In the hallway, Derek was on his phone, pacing. Linda trying to talk to him. I can't believe you didn't warn me they had all this. Derek hissed. You said it would be fine. Forget it. I'm done. He headed for the exit. The bailiff stopped him. Court's still in session, Mr. Vance. Derek sat back down, leg bouncing, checking his phone obsessively. Court reconvened. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, looked at everyone in turn. I've been on this bench 19 years. This is not a typical custody dispute. She looked at Linda. Mrs. Mitchell, you have systematically undermined your child's relationship with his father. Your complicity in fraud is documented. Your judgment is questionable. She looked at Derek. Mr. Vance, your predatory pattern is documented and disturbing. She looked at James. Mr. Mitchell, nothing I've heard suggests you're anything but a devoted father. You've shown restraint, honesty, and unwavering commitment to your son. She paused. I'm granting primary physical custody to James Mitchell, effective immediately. James couldn't breathe. Mrs. Mitchell, you will have supervised visitation, twice monthly, pending completion of family counseling. Derek Vance is prohibited from any contact with the minor child. The gavel came down. Linda sobbed. Derek stood abruptly, pushing past people toward the door. Mr. Vance, the judge's voice rang out. A warrant is being issued for your arrest on fraud charges. Bailiff, but Derek was already gone. Out the courtroom door, running. The bailiff went after him, but by the time they reached the parking lot, Derek's BMW was gone. James sat frozen, Hank's hand on his shoulder, Samantha smiling. We won, she said. You won. Margaret slumped in her wheelchair. A nurse who'd come with her checked her vitals, looked alarmed. We need to get her to the hospital, now. Hank was already moving, pushing the wheelchair fast. Maggie. James caught up to them in the hallway. Did we win? Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. We won. I got Tommy. Margaret tried to smile. Good. I knew you would. The ambulance was waiting outside. Paramedics loading Margaret in. I'll meet you there, James said. Go, Hank said. I'll handle everything here. Go to your sister. The hospital room was quiet, except for the monitors beeping slow and steady. Margaret in the bed, oxygen mask over her face. Hospice nurse in the corner, giving them space. James sat beside her, held her hand. We won, Maggie. Judge gave me primary custody. Linda gets supervised visits. Derek ran. There's a warrant out. Margaret's eyes opened. She pulled the oxygen mask down. I want to meet him. Tommy. Maggie, you need to rest. Please. James called Samantha. Social services expedited it. Emergency circumstances. An hour later, Hank brought Tommy to the hospital. The boy was nervous, scared of the machines, the hospital smell, the dying woman in the bed. Tommy, this is your Aunt Maggie, my sister. Why didn't I know you before? Tommy asked. Margaret's voice was faint. I made a mistake. I left, but I came back for you, for your dad. She held out her hand. Tommy took it carefully. Your dad loves you. Never forget that. He'll always be there. Tommy didn't fully understand, but he felt the importance. Pulled a drawing from his pocket, stick figures he'd made during the court recess. Dad, me, Aunt Maggie, labeled in crayon. Put this in my hands. James took the drawing. Maggie? It's okay, she smiled. I'm ready. To James, Mom and Dad would be proud. You're a good man, a good father. Her eyes closed. The monitor's beep slowed. Within minutes, Margaret was gone. Tommy looked up at James. Is she sleeping? James pulled his son close. Something like that, buddy. Margaret's funeral was small, early March, snow mostly melted. James, Tommy, Hank, Reverend Patterson, a handful of people from Phoenix who'd flown in. Tommy placed his drawing in the casket. She came back when we needed her, James said at the graveside. She taught me it's never too late to do the right thing. The settlement took 2 weeks to finalize. Linda kept the house. James didn't want it anyway. Too many ghosts. He kept the store, got primary custody. Linda would pay back the fraudulent debt over 10 years. Derek was spotted in Nevada, then vanished. FBI involved now, interstate fraud, multiple victims. Chances of catching him soon were slim, but he'd lost everything. The con had failed. James and Tommy found a duplex 3 blocks from Hank's place. Small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, but it had a garage and a backyard. Moving day, the neighbors welcomed them. Casseroles on the porch, friendly waves. They painted Tommy's room together. Blue like the sky, messy and laughing and healing. Linda's supervised visits were awkward at first. Tommy angry, hurt, confused. But slowly, visit by visit, small thaw. He'd hug her briefly before leaving. He'll forgive her eventually, the social worker said. But it takes time. James promoted Mike to manager at the store, cut his own hours to 40 a week maximum, home for dinner every night. Homework help, bedtime stories, the routines that mattered. The store did fine. Better, even, with Mike handling day-to-day operations and James making space for what really mattered. Community welcomed them back. Church on Sundays, Tommy and youth group, their old booth at the diner, Betty saving it with a smile. Hardware store customers offering quiet support. The young couple next door invited them for cookouts. Their kids played with Tommy. New friends. Normal life. Late April. Spring finally arrived for real. Snow gone, tulips pushing through in their small yard. Saturday morning, warm sun, mild breeze. Dad, can we build something today? James looked up from his coffee. What do you want to build? A birdhouse. For Aunt Maggie. She liked birds, right? Cardinals were her favorite. James had told Tommy that. Yeah, buddy. Let's build a birdhouse. They went out to the small back porch, spread out the wood, the tools, the sandpaper. Same as that December morning in the garage, but different now. Everything different. A cardinal called from the tree in the yard, bright red against new green leaves. They worked together, James guiding Tommy's hands. Smooth strokes, with the grain, just like that. Tommy sanding carefully, tongue out in concentration, comfortable silence between them, father and son. The rhythm they'd had, now found again, from the neighbor's yard, kids laughing, life going on, spring arriving, winter finally over. Tommy looked up, unprompted. Dad? I'm sorry I called him that. Called him Daddy. James stopped working, put down his hammer. James crouched down to Tommy's eye level, took his time, finding the right words. Son, you didn't know better. Some people fool everybody for a while. Doesn't mean you're foolish. Means they're good at lying. Tommy's eyes filled up. But I hurt you. Yeah, you did. James put his hand on his boy's shoulder. But not on purpose. You were just trying to make sense of adults acting badly. And we're healing now. That's what matters. He pulled Tommy into a hug, held him while the boy cried into his shoulder, didn't say anything else, just held on. After a minute, Tommy pulled back, wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Can we finish the birdhouse? We can finish the birdhouse. They went back to work, sanding, fitting pieces together, building something with their hands the way they'd always done, the way they'd keep doing. Above them, the snow melted off the duplex roof, drip, drip, drip like a clock marking time moving forward. The cardinal sang again, its mate answering from somewhere nearby. Mated for life, those birds, loyal. The woods smelled like possibility. The spring air was mild, forgiving. Tommy's small hands worked next to James's weathered ones, and something about that, the generations continuing, the teaching and learning, the simple act of building together, made everything else bearable. James looked at his son, at their small yard, at the modest duplex that wasn't what he'd imagined at 67, but held everything that mattered. He'd lost the house, the marriage, his sister. But Tommy was here, safe, loved, learning that a man's worth isn't measured by what's taken from him, but by what he refuses to surrender. What kind of birds will live in this one, Dad? James watched the cardinals in the tree, thought about Margaret. Cardinals, I think. They mate for life. Loyal birds. He looked at his son, like you and me. Tommy smiled, went back to sanding. The spring sun was warm on their backs. Winter was over. They were going to be okay.